So let me create a new
Theory.
let me create a new query so that you can start from a fresh Okay, so I'll start by running you through some of the background we need to have to enable us navigate better in the practical section. So like I said, this will be the last aspect of the advanced SQL queries. We'll be looking at subqueries. That's common table expression. So just to give an overview, so in this section, we'll cover subqueries and common table expressions, CTES. So which are different ways of working with nested queries. So as the name implies, sub. Now that we are familiar with query, from the basic to the intermediate, we should know that sub means what? Writing query inside query. That is what this session actually focused on, writing query inside query. And there is a way that is denoted, and there are some data management that will require you writing subquery instead of just a direct query. So just to illustrate it better, as you can see, a subquery is a query nested within a main query. So which means that you have a main query that is addressing certain tasks, and then you nest another query inside it to also perform another task. So this also involves collaborating with the aggregates. You can see the presence of aggregates in what I'm showing on the screen. So, and it's typically used for solving a problem in multiple steps. So problems that are in multiple dimension, they are the ones at times you bring in the subquery to address. So which means that an SQL programmer will be limited to an extent if he or she does not understand this, how to write subqueries. Because there are some multi-level challenges that will require you writing the subquery. So if you look at the example here, return all country. So we are still working with that particular data set. We are still working with that data set. So if you look at the task we have here, return all country that have an equal average happiness score. Remember that from the last query, happiness score is not the table. The one that have S is the one with table. This one is the header, so that it doesn't confuse us. So if we look at step one aspect calculates the average happiness score. That's what the total average of the values under that column. That is what step one sub there, which is what you are seeing the output here. Now, if you look at step two, it says return all rows with a happiness score greater than the first query results. So here we are still using, this is where subquery comes in. So you can see that select all record from happiness scores. So that happiness scores is a table. Then where happiness score, which is a header. So you can see where subquery comes in.
Can you just get water?
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, so you can see where subquery comes in. The subquery here is the one you have in the parentheses bracket. So that is one thing you must understand. That is how you speak subquery. It's always wrapped in the parentheses bracket. So what is it trying to address? It's trying to select average happiness from happiness score, which is the header, from the happiness score. So it's just for you to know. And if you look at the way I have labeled it, whatever is in the parenthesis bracket is the subquery. And then whatever the one in select, the one that are not in the bracket, they are the what? The main query. So the outer and the what? The query. So that is what I'm trying to illustrate here. So just to add to it, I said the subquery is run first. So because we may want to know that by the time we run this code, which one is going to be executed first? The subquery, just like mathematics, whatever you have in the brackets will be solved first before, relating it with what is outside. So that is how SQL also implements its subquery. It will analyze or implement the subquery before going to the main query. So let's look at the subquery basics. What are a few things we need to understand? So subquery can occur in multiple places within a query. That's why it is called subquery. Number one, calculation in select clause as part of join in the from clause. So we are going to be looking at them from different clauses. If we are bringing in subquery where we are using the clause select, we are bringing in subquery where we are using the clause from, we are bringing in subquery where we are using the clause what? Having. That's the reason why we treated that those six big queries, so that because here having is playing a major role here, and where also is playing a major role. Now, if you look at the table that I have on the screen, select all record from happiness, select all record from happiness score. That is table. Where happiness, that is a header. Select average happiness score. That is, you are calculating the average, adding all, that is where you are bringing the subquery. You are adding all the values under that column called happiness underscore score. And then you are also referencing that column from a table, because you can see that the table was referenced on the outside before the subquery, and the table is also referenced inside the what? The bracket holding, because both of them must access the table. So just for you to understand the syntax. So this is an example of a subquery used as a filter in the where clause, right? So now, if you look at this also, subquery in the select clause, subquery in the select clause. So here at this point, we start implementing it. So just give me 1 minute. When I come back, we're going to switch to our development environment and start implementing this so that we can have proper understanding. All right. Can you hear me now? Please confirm if you can hear me.
Yes. I can hear you.
All right. So so let's quickly look at so let's quickly see how we can implement that subquery that I just showed us from the slide in our query. Now we are still working with the table, which is let me check for the database. So we are still using this particular database. So I'll say use so that we can connect to it. Underscore advanced underscore SQL. I make mistake in spelling. Marvel underscore advanced. Application. Let me relaunch it again. So let me quickly make a new query. Use underscore advanced underscore SQL. Okay, so now I was showing us the query, the subquery we want to implement, which is this. So so the first thing here, we are returning. Let me use a comment to explain that. To return the difference. That is actually the task. The difference between it's return the difference between each country between each country's happiness scores and average So this kind of question, you are going to involve the subquery. So the subquery will now be select, like the one I just explained in the slide. So remember that the key selection here is country. So I will select country, then let me bring it down for formatting purpose. You now call the header, which is involved happiness underscore score, happiness underscore score, because we are writing an SQL query that will deduct the differences. That is what the total score, the average of happiness score in the first country, subtracting from the average of happiness score in the second country. So that is what we are writing. So it means that our subquery will now be, we bring in what? The minus here. So remember I said subqueries are always wrapped in the parentheses what? Bracket. And then you also select the average, AVG.
Okay, study again.
Yes, average, and then the header involved that you want to calculate it average, which is the same word, happiness underscore score, happiness underscore score. And then from which table? From happiness table. From happiness underscore scores. So that is the name of the table, the one with S. Then after this, I will say, remember that, let me see if I close all the brackets. So I have to close this particular bracket now, which is the one for the subquery. And then we want it to be described as difference between different from underscore average. So I believe we are used to this in defining our description. Now, you only define the table where the values will be referenced from inside the subquery. But remember what I told you while I was explaining the slide, that you have to reference the table both inside the subquery and the main query. So now we need to end it with what? From. So this from is for the main query, while this one was for the subquery. So from happiness underscore scores, which is the table. Now, before we end it, so if I run this query, we should be able to get, especially the data. So this is exactly what we have in the slide that I was showing you. So where we use the subquery. So we redefine the output as what? Different from what? Average. So for each of the country, you subtract from each of the country, you subtract what? The average of the happiness score in each of the country. Because when we were working with the value data, we discovered that each of the country has the same code we call what? Happiness score. I hope that is understood. So the whole of this is the subquery. Just take note of the syntax. The table must be referenced both outside and what inside the subquery, and the subquery enveloped in the parentheses bracket. Right. So now we have some few tasks that we want to look at. Let me go to my slide and present them so that you see what we're working at now. So this is where we want to start illustrating how we can use subquery with select clause, how we can use subquery with what? From clause, like I highlighted before. So we have all these tasks before us. So let's see how we can implement them one after the other. So here we try to view the data in the happiness table, just so that we can understand the data. So that is going to be the first task. So let me go back to my development environment. So here, let me use comments, viewing the data in happiness table. So of course, we just for us to have an understanding of what is there, we are viewing all the value to select all value from happiness table, happiness underscore table. So now we have an idea of the headers, the features in the data set. So we'll try and understand the data so that when we start relating with the field, it will be better understood. So that is the first task. So the second thing we want to do is that we want to view the average of scores. We want to get the total average of score, because the subquery using the from clause is going to involve us knowing the total. So let's say we want to view here, we want to calculate the average. We want to calculate the average of happiness underscore score. We want to get the average. Let's even know the total average first. So our query statement is going to be select, then average of the happiness score, average of the happiness underscore score, average of the happiness underscore score. That from the table happiness, from the table happiness underscore scores. Right? So this, we are just looking for the average. So we can now see that the average is 5.44 something something. Now that we have seen the average, so this is where we now want to bring the subquery. So what is the subquery going to do? The subquery is for us to calculate the average happiness score deviation from the average. The average happiness score from deviation from the what? And now we are going to return both the year, the country, and that heading. So just to put it in comments, this is where we are bringing in the subquery. And what is the subquery? The nature of the subquery task is happiness score. Let me just summarize it this way. Happiness score deviation. Deviation from the average. The average. And then here we also return, while you are displaying that, also return country, sorry, year, comma, country, comma, return the happiness score column as well. So for us to answer this task using the subquery, so we are going to say select those columns that we want to return alongside with the average. We'll mention them as usual. We have learned from the basic and intermediate. So we have, from the data we just call now, we discover that we have a column called year, and then we also have country, and then comma, then we'll have happiness underscore score, which is just the header, and then comma. Then we will now bring in the subquery here. Bring in the subquery. So the subquery is to select the average of the happiness underscore score. Then from the happiness scores, and then as the average of what? The happiness score. Then from the happiness score. So that is where we are writing the subquery. So remember the rule, the subquery must be in the parentheses brackets. If I were to be you just open that bracket first before you start writing. So we want to use the subquery to select the average of the happiness score. The average of the happiness score. So I'll say average of the happiness score. Average of the happiness underscore score. All right. Then from which table? Remember, I told us that we must always reference the table while you are in the subquery section, and also references while you are out the subquery section. From happiness table, which is scores, the one that carry S, then you close that subquery bracket. Then how do you want to present it? We want to present it as AVG underscore. We are abbreviating to HS, which means what? Average score. That is going to return a new column. And that is where it's going to, deposit the calculated value. Then you have to now reference the from. You have to now reference the from. That is from the outside, from the same happiness table, happiness underscore table. Right. So with this, we will have been able to prevent that. So let's run it. So you can see that it returned the year, the country, just like we mentioned, and the number, the values under, and then the average of the happiness score. So all of this is just trying to show us how we can write SQL subquery, query inside query. So it's still almost the same thing with what we did the other time, but just for us to relate it in a different way. I hope you are following. Have you
Yes.
executed this one?
I'm still writing the code.
Just execute it. Let me see. I will go to the next one. So this very one that we did is just the what? The average of happiness score. And the question says I want to know the deviation between the happiness score in the first table and the happiness score in the second table. So that will be the next query that we are going to write. That one will involve two subqueries.
Yes, I'm done.
Okay. And you have outputted the result, right?
Yes.
Okay. So here, now, why I wanted us to understand it individually so that you now understand when we are combining multiple queries, multiple subqueries. That one was just one subquery. So the one I want to run now will involve two subqueries because we want to get the sum of average of happiness score in one of the subquery. We will deduct it from the average of what happiness score uh, from another what query. So let me just highlight the tags again here so that you understand what we are doing. Deviation for the average. Deviation from the average. So here, select. So what I'm going to do to avoid wasting my time. So we are taking the whole of this. We are taking the whole of this. Control C, and then I will just come here and paste it. All right, I will just put a comma. So that one is the first subquery. So the second subquery now, we now say happiness, after putting a comma there, happiness underscore score, then minus, bring in the second subquery. Let me open the two brackets. Then I will select the average AVG, average of the same what? Happiness underscore score, happiness underscore score. Then close the bracket. Then remember I said you must always reference the table you are calling this header from. So which is from what? Happiness, from happiness underscore scores. That's the name of the table. Then we'll close that bracket, and then how do we want to present it? That should be presented as different between, because this is the main question, as a difference between from the underscore average, underscore average, underscore average. Then before you now finally reference the outer table, which is what? From the same happiness. So you can see that the difference between this subquery and the other one, this one is where you are dealing with what? Two subquery in the main query. So stores. So there are instances where it will involve it depending on the data. So right now, working with this data, it might be given another data where it will look more, it will make more sense to you. So let me run it and see what we get. So we get an output. So the output we have gotten here is that we first of all calculated. This is the what? The scores, right? This is we calculated the average of what? The happiness score, and then deducted the subquery calculation from the first subquery from the second subquery. Once you have executed, you let me know.
Yes.
Okay, so let's assume that this was supposed to be a classwork, but let's just run through it together. So I will just highlight it in a real life scenario. Let's assume that you are working with an organization, and let me tag it assignment. So we will answer it together in the class. Just want you to see how the statement can be put to you. Right. So what is the assignment? The assignment is that let's say our product team, plans on evaluate evaluating evaluating our products price our product price later this week to see if any adjustments let me break it now. What is it? Any adjustments need to be made for next year. Right? So this is just to give you a picture of how you are working on an organization, how you can be asked to perform the tasks that will involve software. So so this is just like they are referring to you. Can you give a list of our products? Can you give a list of our products from most to least expensive along with how much each break it down each along with how each product differs from each other, but the average unit price. So here we are going to work with another thing. So let's assume that you are given this task as the data administrator, and say our product team plans on evaluating our product price later this week to see if any adjustment needs to be made for next year. Then they are taxing you as a database administrator that, okay, can you give a list of our products from most to least expenses? That is the first query statement you are going to write, along with how much each product differs from, that is differences. Now, to answer this question, the first thing we are going to look at is to understand the table products. So let's start by reading. Let's start by reading data from the product table, table. That is the first task. Let's start by reading data from the product table. And to do that, of course, all the way from our basic SQL scale, select all record from products. Select all record from products. So if I run it, so just for us to have an idea, because all these tables are in that database that we loaded. So we now know that our product table has product ID, product name, factory where it was produced, division, and unit price, because unit price was mentioned here. We needed to find out if we have that column. So now that we have discovered that, now I want to select only three columns from this table to see if we have them, because they will be needed in the subquery. So I'll say what here, view only three columns. View only three columns from the product table. Table. So what are the three columns we want to select from the? I'll say select. I'll mention them from what we just discovered now. We have a product. We have a product underscore ID. We want to display this. Next one, we also discover that we have products underscore name. We have product underscore name. And then of course we have units price. So I just want to focus on this. So units price. We have unit underscore price. We have unit underscore price. So these are the column we want to pick, and then from which table? From products table, right? So if I run it, so I have three of them, because these are the consigned columns. So I needed to just view only them. So now that we have been able to view this, now let's write our first subquery is going to be, we are selecting these three headers, and then we are calculating the average of the unit price. We're trying to answer the question, because that is what the question says. The product differs from the average unit price. So we need to get the what? The average unit price column calculated. So now what we are going to do here, just to maintain this, I will have just copied it and paste it. So here, I will also say, let me use comments to write it. So now calculate average of unit price. All right, now selecting the three columns alongside. Selecting the three columns alongside. So my query statement is going to be select. Remember that just to save my time, I will just copy the whole of this part of the code and then just paste it here first. Then after that, I'll put a comma before I introduce my subquery. So my subquery will now be in the brackets. bracket. What are we selecting? We are selecting the average of units, the average of unit price, the average of unit price. And then from which table, don't forget the syntax was always reference the table while you are in the subquery section from the same products table there before you end it. And that will be created or be presented in another column called as, let's say, AVG underscore units underscore price, so that it will be different from the one we have there. So once the average is calculated, it will create another column and then output the values there. Now, you are done referencing that in the subquery. Then you have to come outside and reference the table again, because you highlighted some fields that are not in the subquery. So how does the SQL know that, okay, where are all these selected header? That is why you have to come and say what from the same table, from the same table, and then before we execute this. So you can now see that we have been able to write a subquery statement. Though we just call all this alongside, but what we have calculated is the average of unit price, and that has been outputted in a different column called what? AVG underscore units, then underscore price. So all of this is just trying to show you how you can write subquery. I believe with the numbers of subquery we are going to write before the end of the class, when you are given any data that is structured in a way that you can write subquery, you should be able to understand the syntax. Have you implemented so that I can go to the next aspect of it?
Yes.
Okay, because the next aspect of it is where we want to return the ID, the product name, the unit price, the average unit that we have just calculated now. And then we will now finally calculate the difference between each, we'll now calculate the difference between the unit price and the average unit price. Let me see if I can quickly put that in writing to enable us to write it down. So here we want to look at the return of products, product ID, return product ID, products name, product ID, product name, comma, units, price, comma, average units. That's the one we just calculated now. That was the reason why we calculated it, because we want to return it, comma. Then after that, the next thing we are going to do, which is going to be the last aspect of it, is that and the difference. The differences between each. That was actually the main question. Each unit price, and the average unit price. So let's execute the complete code. So we are going to start by saying select, like we just mentioned, we are returning some columns alongside. So the first one is product underscore ID, the way it is in your data. Second one is products underscore name. Next one is units underscore price. And then, of course, comma. Then bring in the subquery, put the bracket first. So select average. Select average of units, which is the units underscore price in the data set. Units underscore price. Then from which table? From product table. From product table. That will be presented as what? That will be presented as what? AVG underscore AVG underscore unit underscore price underscore price. Then of course, don't forget you must always reference the table outside the subquery for the benefit of those ones that you selected outside the subquery section. So if I run it now, I get what? You can see I have the unit price and I have the what? The average unit price. So now the last thing we are going to do now is to subtract, because that is what the last aspect said, that what, and the difference between each unit price. This is one unit price. This is another unit price. So if you subtract this from this is the total unit price that we initially calculated. This is the actual unit price. So by the time the last part of the question says we should find what the difference. So this is where we are also going to write multiple subquery. The first one and the second one to be denoted from each other. So here, let me just copy the whole of this. This is the one we are about answering now. So let me just put it here for better understanding. So this is the aspect of the task we are forming. So the first thing I'm going to do to save my time, the whole of this is needed. The whole of this is needed. Yeah, the whole of this is needed. So I copy and then come down here and paste it. I will just put a comma because I want to write the next one, the next subquery. So we are deducting the whole of this subquery value, which is this, from this.
Where is the first one that you were returning?
Yes, this is the first one. Yes, this is the first one. What I have, this is what I'm asking now, this one now. Now, for me to answer this is the first one that we have got to. And now I want to,
This is the second question. The first one was returned.
yes, yeah, okay, yes. This is the second question. The
I did
second,
not see the return one.
okay, the first question is this one. Have you seen it
Yes,
now?
yes.
So the one I am returning now is this one now. So that is why I copied it. I will have manually what written it. I have to copy because I need it. So I will now come here and say, after the select average, whatever, as this, then I will now come and say units, because here I just want to do subtraction, unit underscore price. Sorry, let me off underscore price minus the second subquery. So I'll open the bracket for that second subquery. Then I will also select AVG, and then units underscore price, and then from products, believe you still understand the syntax, then close the subquery. Then how do you want to present it? As this is the column that we compute the differences. So I'll say what different what prices, because that is what the tab says, that they want to know the different prices for each of the products. So now I'll come here and say from the main table, which is from the products table, and then run it. So you can see now we have been able to what calculate the difference between each, and now we have answered the let's see whether, yeah, we have answered the second question. So just that I'm going to bring in order because we want to arrange, we want to add order to it as part of what we have done. But let me wait for you to complete this one. Okay, so here we want to add order. We want to sort the unit price. We want to sort the unit price. So let me just use comment to highlight that here. Sort the unit price. Sort the unit price in descending order, so that we can see how we can blend all this. So for us to add the order command, so let me just copy the whole of this so that we don't start writing from scratch, and then paste it here. So the only thing you are going to do is for you not to close it yet. So you just go down to the next line, and then you add your order by, then you reference the header that you want to order its value, which is product, that is a price, rather, price. And then remember that if you do not put any, like I told you last time, if you did not specify ascending or descending, if I end it like this, which order would it use? It will use
Ascending.
ascending order. So for you to define it properly, you put this, and then if you run it, it will output the same value. But let's see what we have here. Yes, the error is that the products, there should be S. So if I run it, it will output it, and then you see that the values under unit price, they are now what? Sorted. So you can now be able to what? To write your information and maybe know which one is the highest, and then followed by each other and all of that. So that is the essence of adding that. So let's quickly look at another subquery using clause, because that one is what? This one that we are using since is what? Using what has been our focus is using from. Remember, we mentioned 3 clauses that can be used while you are writing your subquery: where clause, from clause, and then select clause. So the one we are using is select clause. So let's see how we can bring in the from clause. This one is what? Select clause. So let's see how fast we can go. We still have one left. So subquery using subquery. So subqueries using the from clause. Using the from clause. So here, for example, we are asked to return. Let's look at an example here. We are asked to return. Here we are asked to return. Let me put it in comments so that you understand it. We are asked to return. We are asked to return each country. Each country. We are asked to return each country's country happiness. Happiness scores for the year. For the year alongside the country average happiness score. So that is our tax here. Now, there's a concept that we'll have explained in that last video, where you can represent a long text with a short text, and SQL understand that. So for example, if I say select, to check, it's like, oh, I shouldn't write, where I'm writing, no. Let me take it out, control. X. Supposed to bring it here. So if I write select, now what it means is that going forward, anywhere we have happiness score, that is the table name, it will now be represented as what? As HS. So SQL, if you watch that video, there's a place where I explain, and even the man that was teaching asked a question, like how does SQL know this? Yes, it's a logic we need to know. Now, here, then, comma. So that is what? That is happiness scores in the first table. Then, remember we talk about what? Return each country happiness. Return each country. Now, that happiness score is the first table. Then we have country. We have country. We have country in this particular one. So after writing that, you will now put a comma and say what? That header that you have abbreviated HS dot the country in it. That is what you are calling. So that is you have reorganized or recognized happiness scores as HS. Then you are now saying that what? From that table, you are selecting the year. And from that table, you are also selecting what? The country.
Okay.
So that's what you are saying here. So now you are done with that table because say each year. And you want to enter the next, you now say from that same table, you want to select what? Another header. We are selecting the three headers, just like the way we were selecting before. But now we are bringing this concept of representing them with the shortcut. So which means that this is the same thing as you are selecting three columns, but because instead of you writing happiness scores in full, you just abbreviated it. So now I'll put a comma, then go to the next line. Now remember that we are saying that we are returning the average of this what of each of them. So which means that I will just come here and say country. I'll just come here and say country underscore HS dot the AVG underscore the HS underscore by underscore country. Here we are adding left join. We are bringing left join here. So I will now say, okay, from which table? From the happiness in full, because this is another selection. So you have not acknowledged the shortcut in this selection. That is why. So this is the from clause that we are talking about in writing what? Subquery, not select now, is a from. So from happiness underscore score underscore scores, which is the table from happiness underscore score, and then which will now be represented as what? HS before joining. Now we bring in the left join. So if you have watched that video, talk about the left join. Now under the left join, that is where you now bring the subquery. Remember, the subquery should always be. I'm here to find out whether my spelling is correct here. Why is it showing this?
Because your from is meant to be with select. Your from is meant to be with select, not under select.
Okay, yes. Are you talking about here?
Yes.
Are you sure is that the, because I'm wondering, no, I don't think that is. Okay, let me just finish writing. I will debug it that too.
And you did not put comma in the country, I think.
Yeah, right. Good. But if I put the comma here, it's part of it. But just hold on. Let me just write the code, which I will debug it out. So select, I think I'm in a bracket now. So select country, select country, comma, select country, comma, AVG, because talk about the average of happiness score. Happiness underscore score. That is the header in the table. Then, sorry. Control. Okay, so I think I'm still in the table. Then as average underscore HS underscore by underscore country underscore country. And then from happiness table, from happiness table. So let's say this is the bracket. So we need to have another closing for the subquery. For the subquery, let me see. Just want to see where for the subquery, I think correct. Just check. Okay, so as okay now group by group by group by here you have to group by which country group by country, and then finally before you close your subquery bracket, then as that will create another column called country underscore each country happiness. And then remember when you are joining, you have to use the keyword if you have watched that video on hs.country, because we have to choose the common attribute for the joining. Once we are joining table, the table must have common attributes. So the ground for joining is the country. Then where country in the happiness table is equals to the country in the other country. So let's say country underscore HS, then country. So from that table, from that video, you should be able to understand, I think what we did last time can explain this. So what we are trying to do here is that if anytime we are joining two tables, that is when we did the multiple table, there must be a common attribute for joining them together. And that's what we are trying to put here to define the type of join. So now let me see where I got this wrong. Where did I stop here? Select average. Okay, so I think I've seen where select scores. I think I've seen where we got it wrong. So select happiness scores. Let me see. We need to rewrite the whole of this part. Let me check. Select happiness underscore score. Sorry. Select all. Select all from Let me just write it again so that there. Select all from, we got it from particular point. Select all from happiness. Happiness underscore score. Then we are representing it with HS. Then remember the left join. Left join. Then the subquery comes in here. Subquery comes in here. So I believe we're getting this from before. So select country from average, select country average happiness underscore scores. Sorry, score because it's the header. Then that should be represented as ABG underscore HS underscore by underscore country. Right. Then remember the clause we are focusing on from. So this is the first one, the first subquery. The second subquery now, outside that one, we come and say from happiness underscore scores underscore scores. Then here we have to group by. We have to group by based on the nature of the task. Group by country because they say each country you are comparing, so you need to group by. And remember the reason why we selected this country here, because I told you last time that the field for the group by must be attached to select before you reference it. So that is why I'm using group by country, because that is what I selected here. So now the next thing is group by country. Then before you now close the subquery. So the subquery starts here and then end here. So you're going to select the total average of happiness underscore score, which is a header in the data set called what? Happiness what? Underscore scores, which you reference here. So this is a table, why this is a header in this table. Now, you selected this because you want to use it to group by the average. So now after this, before we can ask, okay, the new column that we have put that should be referenced as country underscore HS. Country underscore HS. Now, we will now have to determine how the two tables will be joined. The factor that will determine if two of them are qualified to be joined. So that is where we bring in the on keyword. And then remember that what we are selecting here, we have already said that the one that will be at the left-hand side is now represented with what? HS instead of writing it in full. So that is why I'm just writing what? HS to represent it, and then country, equals to, that is what we are joining based on country in both tables. The country also country underscore HS, then dot country again, dot country, and then before we can end our query. So what we have simply done here is that this is the Can you hear me?
Yes.
Say something.
No, you can continue.
Okay. So HS, so this line is just the journey method, which we have learned before, to say that what the two table has common attribute called country. So this one is from the first table, which we abbreviated to be this. Why this one is what? This, which we abbreviated to be this, also to be this. So now if we run this code now, let's see what we get. So we get the value. So if you check what we have selected, we now have average per country, by country. This is average by country, which was the task given to us. So To check the tax sale, let me see if I can get to where and the difference between each unit price and the average unit price. Is it the tax? The new one? After sorting, I thought I wrote it in West. What was it? Okay, return country's happiness score for the year, as well as the average happiness score for as across the year. So that is what we have just implemented. So have you implemented it?
Almost.
Let me take it to try and implement it, because this is where we stop. We still have another clause. Remember, there are 3 clauses. We have used the let clause, and then we have used from clause. I think we still have the where clause. So look at that as the final section of this. It's coming. Okay, so where did you started executing to this code from? If you can just widen this interface a little.
I don't see it.
Yes, okay, yes, I can see. Wait, I see. Okay, okay. Scroll up from the beginning. Okay, okay. Yes, okay, I can see it. Okay. Okay, keep going down to see everything. All right, I think okay, so I think it's clear. Now we have another clause which we'll look at in the next class. Then after that, I will go and confirm that second video to see what you I will also prefer if you can implement that second video right here so that I can see what you have done, just like you did today now. All right.